Let's see. All right. Okay, welcome everybody. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and turn my video off for now, but at least you could connect a name and a face while we're doing the presentation. While I'm doing the presentation. All right. Thank you, Eileen, for this opportunity to do this session. Obviously, you know, having accessible PDF documents on the web is just equally as important as having accessible web pages. And sometimes they can be a little bit more of a challenge. So, you know, the more professional development and training that we can get out on how to, you know, create those good source documents, as well as do a little bit of remediation after the fact in some cases, will go a long way in helping you with your accessibility work and your due diligence and creating accessible content. And we'll put some links at the end, but over the course of like the last 9 months or so, we have a whole series of sessions that have been done through Missouri Assistive Technology. So you have a lot of opportunities, and as well as this one will be recorded, so you can come back later to review it or to pass on to other staff. So, all right. So this particular session is kind of piggybacking, building upon a session that I did last summer through Missouri Assistive Technology. There was a little bit more introductory information in the session from last summer, but you'll see some overlap with this particular one. And I'll have a little bit of talking points at the beginning, and then we'll just kind of hop in and take a peek at properly converting a document to PDF and just getting yourself exposed and familiar with how Adobe Acrobat, you know, functions and what the features of it are, and specifically the accessibility checking features that are built into it. So we'll have links at the end if you want to go back, if you want to review anything from last summer, or you haven't had an opportunity to see those presentations. We've got a whole series of presentations that have been done over the course of the last year that you can take advantage of. So on the agenda for today is just common ways PDFs are created, you know, what makes an accessible PDF, the do's and don'ts when converting to PDF from MS Office, making sure that when you are saving it, that you're doing it the proper way, because unfortunately there's wrong ways and right ways to do it in there. Getting you familiar with, in Adobe Acrobat Pro, what tags are and the importance of having the reading order set correctly. And we're actually going to just take a look at those features. Leveraging how you set up Acrobat to be able to quickly access the features that you need, you know, the tags, the accessibility checker, just different features of it. And then we'll segue into opening a document and just reviewing, you know, what tags look like, how reading order works, and how to launch an accessibility check. So without further ado, okay, so common ways how PDFs are created. And the first one is probably, you know, less commonplace for just a regular user. Many times you're going to see web applications that you use, like a credit card or a banking website, and you're able to get, a statement, a monthly statement, and download it, things like that. And those are auto generated from tools that are able to create those PDF documents. And just like anything else, they have to take into consideration that it's outputting something that is accessible. The next two are something more commonplace that you all would be doing, and Microsoft applications like Word, which Word would be your most common, but a lot of what we'll see today applies the same to, Excel, PowerPoint, and the like. Word is probably one of the most common place things that you're going to be using to convert things over to PDF. And there's going to be scenarios where you're going to have scanned documents. It might be for whatever reason that you don't have the source document. It might be that it's something that's faxed to you and you don't have the source document. It might be something that had signatures added to it and different things like that. But at the same time, if you're going to publish that on the internet, on a website, it still has to be readable text. So you got to keep that in mind. So let's see here. Okay, so will I need to review my PDF documents in something like Adobe Acrobat Pro, or will the work that you do in the source document, for example, be good enough to pass accessibility? Kind of depends upon how it's being created. So in that situation I mentioned where you're using a web application that's auto-generating something, which the first bullet has more to do with someone who is working more in an IT development perspective. So many times I work with people where we have to make sure that these add-in tools that auto-generate PDF documents are actually creating accessible output. So sometimes that means finding a different tool that does a more optimal job, or tweaking settings within that application to make it output something that's tagged. PDFs converted from Microsoft, such as Microsoft Word. If accessibility has been built into the source document, which is the thing that we always strongly recommend, and there is a session through Missouri AT that we talk about making a Word document accessible, probably very little remediation would need to be done, with the exception of if you just have a really complex document. Maybe, I'm thinking of scenarios like maybe you set up like a newsletter in Word, or something that has a little bit more formatting than just say a letter or a manual or something like that. So sometimes it just has more to do with the complexity of the document. Things are a little more straightforward with headings and text and a little imagery. Most likely you can get most of your accessibility work done in that source document, and that is the easiest way to do it, and it's the most consistent way to get good output for your PDF documents. And then again, there's a wide variety of cases where you will have scanned documents. You will have to kind of deal with that. And, many times, like if you're scanning it in with the scanner, there's something called optical character recognition that you can do as you're scanning it. And many times the scanner will have what we call OCR software that you can take advantage of, and it'll automatically convert it to text-based tagged document. And as well as, you can use a tool like Adobe Acrobat Professional and do the OCR step straight within that tool. So there's tools available to you to do that, and to do it in, as accessible as possible. So do's and don'ts when converting to PDF from a Microsoft Office product. The number one don't, and I'll demonstrate this later too, is don't use the print to PDF feature, which means you're doing file print, Control P, Command P, and then selecting the PDF option. One minute. Okay, there we go. And that will create an untagged document. We'll get into what tags are here in a minute, which is basically giving it structure. There is an option in Word, just simply File, Save as Adobe PDF, or if you have Adobe Acrobat Professional loaded on your machine, and you'll have an Acrobat tab in your Office suite, you can use the Create PDF as well. Those two options are going to automatically provide formatting and tagging, you know, in addition to you implementing accessibility best practices in your document. But, you know, the point is you could do a great job setting up your document as accessibly as possible, but if you use print to PDF, it's going to strip out all that work that you've done. So you definitely don't want to use print to PDF. Okay, so I mentioned something about tags. Tags provide document structure, you know, kind of quote unquote behind the scenes. You know, if any of you have ever looked at HTML source code before, which, you know, many of you may have at least looked at it, but, you know, don't use it on a day-to-day basis. You'll see a lot of similarities between HTML structure and tags in a PDF document. They have a lot of similarities. So it provides structure, and those tags are carried over from the Microsoft Office, you know, software, and then it will properly convert that document to PDF and retain its structure so that assistive technology can consume the document and understand what it's telling them. You know, it gives it, you know, it identifies headings and images and different things like that. And we'll get into that a little bit more in the demo. Reading order is also something that's important. So tag order must follow how the content would be read on the page. And we'll look at this reading order pane. You know, simple documents, you know, a manual, a letter, you know, things like that. The reading order most of the time is going to stay in the proper, you know, top to bottom or left to right type of thing. And, you know, sometimes you'll get some reading order kind of adjusting a little bit that has to be fixed. Sometimes I've seen it with, like, you know, inserting images, and it'll kind of, the reading order will kind of jump around, you know, different things like that. And it kind of back to what I was saying about the, like a more formatted newsletter. Those are the kind of things that you would probably want to check your reading order to make sure that all the sections of your newsletter are reading in the order that you intend and that it's not jumping around. Adobe Acrobat allows you to drag and drop and copy and paste that reading order. It's not going to physically affect how it's physically laid out on the screen, but it allows us the technology to read it in the order exactly that you see it visually, and then have it, you know, mirror that as you navigate through the document with, you know, with a screen reader or, you know, some other device like that. Okay, so at this point, this is where I'm going to go in. We'll do a quick convert of a document from Word to PDF, and then we'll set up Acrobat to kind of optimize it for you to use. And then we'll just go in and start reviewing the document and looking at tags and reading order and the accessibility checker and the like. All right. Okay. So I'm hopping over here. Let's see. All right. So this is my demonstration document, and I've applied a few different things in this document, so it gives us an opportunity to look at different structures when we get into the PDF document. I've got headings. These are identified as headings, and we have list items and links and just, a little use of color. We have an image. We've got tables. Now, this particular presentation is not going to get into properly setting up a Word document. That's a session that you can find on the Missouri Assistive Tech YouTube channel. So we'll invite you later to take a look at that presentation. But we'll just be touching on how to review this and be able to take a peek and make sure that everything looks right once it's converted over. So, as I mentioned, I'm just going to show you. I just clicked File, Print, and then I have an option called Print to PDF, and this is the one that you don't want to use. It will not tag your document properly. So, as a result, we're going to back out of here. File, save as Adobe Reader, or we can go to our Acrobat tab and do Create PDF. And it's just asking me to save it. Yes. All right. So when I did this, it actually automatically popped over to my Adobe Acrobat and opened it. In this situation, I'm using Adobe Acrobat Professional DC, which has been out for a number of years, and it's pretty much the most commonly used version, and the one prior to it, 11, is pretty similar. So if by chance you're using an earlier version, you'll see a lot of similarities. But this one, again, has been out for a while. So, okay, so one of the things, well, I did want to show something really quick. I went into the file properties right now, and I'm just going to show you something really quickly under properties that this is with a property of tagged PDF, and it is assigned to yes. So, that was possible by the way that we saved it out of Word. And that gives it its structure. So the first thing we're going to do now is just set up our dashboard desktop, so to speak, here in the tool, and have features readily available for us to use. So on the left side, we have a left pane, and we can right click in this area and add a few more things to it. Some of these by default will not be listed on when you first open it, but once you add these to the left and the right, every time you open it, they will be available. So we're going to add a few things here. We're going to add tags to the left pane. We're going to add content. We're going to right click and add order. We discussed reading order. And we'll be able to kind of navigate back and forth. We'll kind of navigate back and forth between these as I walk through this demo. Likewise, we're going to be adding some things over on the right side. We have some things over here, and we're going to be adding a few more items to our button bar over to the right. There's a few different ways you can do it. One of the readily available ones is under Tools, and we're going to add Edit PDF, Scan and OCR. For those of you that know you're going to be working with documents that you need to tag for scanning, that would be good to have readily available. If any of you work with making fillable forms, you can add the prepare form. And then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to go ahead and add accessibility, because we'll definitely be diving into that a little bit and taking a look at that. So that is just one of the tabs up here. So you can always go back and forth, take a look at some of these items here and see if there's something else. And you can easily remove things simply by right-clicking and removing them if there's something over here that you want to add or remove. So we're going to go back to this document. All right, so I mentioned tags. So I hit our tags icon over on the left pane, and you're going to see a series. Okay, so you'll notice here that you see things like H1, paragraph tags, different things like that. And in our demonstration here, I'm basically using a document that for the most part is fairly accessible. There might be a few little things that I come across that I'll tweak just as an example. I get a lot more into the session that I did last summer. I get a lot more into taking a document and fixing it and showing how you fix it, and then converting it over to PDF. So this is like a spin-off of that, but focuses just a little bit more on showing you the tool and things like that versus doing a lot of fixing in it. So these are headings, and these headings allow an assistive device to be able to quickly navigate and see what's within a document. If these weren't here like this, and again, you set these up through your styles in your source document, it would be much harder for someone to navigate this document. So you'll see here, paragraph tags. And again, your regular text is going to be wrapped in paragraph tags. And all of this tagging was automatically done from Word over to the PDF document. Here's an example of what list item tagging looks like. Scroll down here. We've got a few things here where we've got like numbered lists and bulleted lists, things like that. And an example here of a table and how it was given table structure. And the top row was identified as a table header that creates accessibility for that table. And again, this was done in the Word document that then carried over and made the PDF version accessible. So that kind of gives you an idea. But, for example, I thought I would show you something that I did catch. Like here is a paragraph tag, and it's just like an empty paragraph tag. Technically, it's really not needed. And in the tag tree, you can literally right click and delete it. It's not needed. Is it really going to hurt the document to leave it in? It's going to make it a little bit cleaner for the end user of an assistive tag, empty tags, because it's going to jump around and it's going to see those tags, but it's not going to really do anything. So sometimes it's nice to just do a little bit of cleanup. But again, that's not, even when you do the accessibility check, if I recall, I don't even think it'll catch things like that. But you have the ability to move tags around and delete things and all of that kind of stuff. So now I'm going to go and talk a little bit about reading order. So quick ways that you can identify what your reading order is simply by arrowing. Hold on just a second. It's being a little, you can go down through your document and see, is the reading order going in the order that you're visually seeing? And in this case, it is. And this document's pretty straightforward. And it's doing a good job. So, but if something was out of order, you have the option to drag things around and put them in the proper reading order. This is, there's an icon over on the left panel that looks like the letter Z in its reading order. And it also gives you that view of the order that everything is. And actually here, okay, so to confirm your reading order, you do want to go over to your reading order tag. So for example, I just noticed here that the image is in the last, it's in the last in the sequence of events. So I mentioned that earlier. Sometimes depending upon when an image was inserted, it may kind of adjust the reading order. And something that you can do right in this view right here is to drag it like that. It doesn't affect anything visually. It's affecting the way that the document's being read. So, and again, that is our reading order option over on the left side. So now that you'll notice, it is now no longer the last thing that's being read on this. So that's kind of an example of something that sometimes can commonly, an image, for example, can be something that's being inserted and it can mess with reading order. But typically, as your text is probably a little bit more consistent, putting text in, it's just be a little bit different in that you're inserting an image or other types of objects, things like that.
Lainey?
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know, intermittently, there's some feedback sound coming from your mic. If there's anything that can be done, that'd be great, but it does go away fairly quickly.
Okay. Do I sound all right now?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, good deal. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so I thought from here, I thought I would go ahead and kind of jump into, go here, jump into and kind of show you what an accessibility check looks like on a document. So I'm hopping over to the right and I'm clicking accessibility. And then from there, I'm clicking accessibility check. The default category is going to be document, which is basically like, you know, a lot of documents are very text-based, maybe with, you know, some formatting or some imagery, etc. And that's going to be your most common one to just leave the default. You may want to change how this works. If you're checking a fillable form, for example, you may want to pick that one. That's probably the most common time I've seen something that maybe you want to pick a different category. We're going to leave. I've always typically left the defaults here and used the document category. Most of the time, this is really good. This will work really well. And then I do a start checking. Once you do this, you'll have a kind of a report pulled back on the left, and you'll have a new icon you notice here with a check mark and a little outline of a person. And that's our accessibility report. And if you have something that you either manually or something failed, it will be highlighted. And so we'll notice in this case, and we'll discuss these things, but we're going to start with our document section first. And whenever you see something that has a question mark by it, this is something that tends to be, it is a manual type of check thing. And probably, if some of you are familiar with accessibility guidelines, that you have to worry about color contrast and fitting certain thresholds for any imagery or any text on the page, that those are the kind of things that you would need to use some other tool, such as a color contrast checker, in order to make sure that all of those things are good. And then logical reading order, again, is, we actually kind of checked that earlier. So that was something that using the reading order, we checked it. So that's kind of the due diligence there. We notice we do have one fail here, and it says title. This is a little glitchy thing in Adobe Acrobat where you have to just fix it. I have a title set in my properties, but it's not associating it correctly. So if I right click and click fix, it will fix it for purposes of accessibility. And we notice now that it is no longer bold. So like I mentioned before, this is a document that I did diligence on, and everything is accessible. But I thought I would go through and talk about what these different sections are and kind of what they mean. First off, under document, if you were to come in here and like tag PDF or image only PDF failed, that would be a big indicator that you need to go back and for tag PDF, that maybe it wasn't tagged properly in the first place. Maybe somebody used file print, something like that. It's best to go back to your source document, tag it there, and then bring it back up over here. If you manually tag something, that's your last, you want to use that as your last resort in Adobe Acrobat. You want to, anything you can do in your source document is your best bet, and it's going to take a lot less time and resources to do it that way. You may come across something that is in image only PDF, which would indicate it's like scanned. That would get more into needing to step through and convert that over into text. And we've got some prior sessions that get a little bit more into that. Language path, the primary language path, typically in your like in like your Office products, the language is set by default, you know, as for example, being English language. But if you had a document that was a alternative version, like a guide that was in Spanish, you know, it would be important that the language in that document, that source document, was set and identified as Spanish, for example. So, you know, for exceptional cases, you would want that changed, but by default, it should set it properly in your source document. Again, title's important because that's what displays if you're like searching for something on the web, that, you know, and a lot of time that title will be whatever the heading one is on that page. Bookmarks. If your document has bookmarks in it, which is common for, you know, like navigating headings and things like that. I'm just going to hop over here. There's actually a view where you can see what your bookmarks are right in Adobe Acrobat, so you can see. And it's picking the bookmarks based off of how I've set up headings in the document. Color contrast obviously needs to be manually checked. And a lot of this stuff, you know, page content, when it gets into tagging and things like that, a lot of this will, you know, if you did your due diligence on converting it correctly from the source document, these things should just fall in line and pass okay. And then we're going to have things in here that just, they pass because they're basically kind of like not applicable. That gets into accessibility things like screen flicker. These would be things that have to do more with things that involve movement of some sort. And
Lainey,
yeah.
We have a question in the chat, if I can read it to you, because I think it pertains to what you just covered. What do you mean you were diligent when creating this document? Can you explain that a little?
So I mentioned earlier that that setting up an accessible source document is your best bet. And I think, Eileen, you did that session on the word accessibility, I think last summer, fall, something like that, where
Correct.
she covered all the steps to create an accessible Word document. So for example, you're adding alt text to your images. You are, and I'm actually, I hovered over this image for a moment, and what you're seeing pop up was the alt text that was set up in Word. So, you know, in this case, this is a little more complex image, but we have, you know, an image there that has some numbers in it. I've set that up. That was done in the source document. It's not to say that you can't do it in Acrobat, but it's best to do it in your source document as much as humanly possible, because it'll just make your life a lot easier. Setting up headings. So if you have logical breakups of your page, like it's like a manual or a guide, many times there's sections to your document. It's best to style those with heading ones, for example, right in your Word document. And I don't mind hopping back over here, but there's a style menu up here in Word, and you'll notice here, heading 1, heading 2. Use those when they make sense. So for example, if your document has a title, identify that as a heading 1. If you have subsections, identify those as heading 2s. That really goes a long way in making that document usable by the widest possible audience. Setting alt text, identifying your table headers, and there's a way to do that in Word that Eileen covers in her session that she did last year. How to set that and for it to properly transfer over so that those headings are announced properly whenever this table is read. just being diligent about how you use color, different things like that. So that basically kind of covers it. Making sure in your Word document that you set your title, and that's what I was talking about right here in your file properties, setting that title. If you don't set it, you'll have to set it in the PDF document. And it's just kind of an extra step that you have to do. And if you ever update that document, you'll want, it's best to have as much done in that source document, because then you'll just have to keep fixing it again in the PDF document. So hopefully that kind of explains what I'm talking about. So I'll just kind of touch a little bit on a little bit more. Forms have to do with if you're making a fillable form in PDF, and that could potentially be, that could potentially be another good session to do as part of the PDF series about making a fillable form accessible. And now it's saying it's passed, but in this case there wasn't any to detect, so that's why it passed. And alternative text has to do with basically images and graphics and things like that are embedded in the document. And then tables are checked, and it's basically checking for proper formatting of table headers and things like that. And it does a good job checking like lists. So they're like I showed in the tags, you saw like LI tags that are wrapped around L and LI tags, and that's that structure that I'm talking about that helps give the document meaning. If, for example, if I had just taken a couple of asterisks here and didn't format this as a bulleted list in Word, most likely PDF would have caught that and went, I think this isn't formatted properly. And it would have flagged it here under lists and go, it looks like you've got some things to fix here. Because it wouldn't, if you just put manually, you create something that looks like bullets, but it's not really formatted. And I'll hop back over here. I have actually formatted this with my bulleted button bar. But if I had put these in with just manually, it would not have structured this properly. And most likely, Adobe would have flagged it and went, you need to fix these, they're not formatted correctly. Likewise, if I had just gone through this document and instead of using styles like I did here, and let's say I just went through, highlighted this text and increased the size and set it to bold, and I kind of consistently did it here and all of that. And if I went through and checked it in Adobe Acrobat, it would have flagged it and said, I'm detecting that you have bolded sections here that should have been flagged as an H1. And it would have flagged these items had I not formatted them as a styled heading and go and said either, at that point you would either manually fix it here, which we also have a class on remediating PDF documents that Kevin Lanahan did last summer. And But again, your best bet is to go back to your source document and fix it there, because you're going to get the cleanest and easiest way to get your accessibility built in. So this gives you an idea of when you run your check, this is all that it's checking. So like we mentioned before, there still is a little bit of manual work to do, but it really can catch a lot of things. You know, for example, if your alternative text is not correct on your image, you know, it's obviously not going to catch that. Those are kind of things that you would need to kind of manually, you know, take note of when you're setting up your alt text in your source document. Just being diligent about, you know, making sure that it's correct and accurate and things like that. And we talked a little bit about alternative text in some of the prior sessions as well. So definitely covered that on recommendations on how to do your alt text. And it also gets into talking about what a decorative image is if you have imagery that doesn't really have any context or meaning. And it gets into some of those and some of the prior ones. All right. So that kind of gives you an overview of what Adobe Acrobat Pro can do for you as far as what it can check, kind of what an accessibility report. And another nice thing too is sometimes you can fix some things straight in this tool. And if so, you can actually do a check again and it will clear. Like, for example, you can fix alternative text straight in the tool, and you can do a check again. And if you fixed all of those, then it'll just rerun it. You can rerun the report and it'll clear those errors. So you can just confirm it. Let's see, I'm trying to think of anything else that I wanted to cover and mention. This would be a great opportunity. Does anybody have any questions? It looks like we've got, you know, about 10 minutes left. And
I would say go ahead and use the chat box. If you
yes.
aren't able to unmute yourself, definitely utilize the chat box for questions.
And I'm just going to kind of hop back to my presentation here. But if you search for, and maybe Eileen, maybe you could put it, it's not, for some reason, it's not letting me do it. The Missouri AT has a YouTube channel and they have all the prior sessions on there. So
yeah, if you want, we can switch sharing the screen and I can open up the channel and show.
That is an excellent idea. And as well as here is my email address. If you want to do any follow-up questions from what we've talked about today, I'm, you know, perfectly fine to field any follow-up questions you might have about this or related questions. And yeah, I'm done with my portion, Eileen. If you want to go ahead and grab the screen and then pop the YouTube channel up.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lainey.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, and then I just need to get to where I can open up the All right. Can you see the YouTube channel? Lainey, I'll ask you since you can access the mic.
Yes.
Okay, so this is our channel. It's Missouri, capital A, capital T. And we have a playlist that's been created. You might have to kind of search through the other ones. We have lots of different topics, but this is the ICT and Accessible Documents playlist. And if you click view the full list, this is where you'll find all of the recorded sessions for Let's Talk ICT. The PDF remediation is the session that Lainey was referring to that Kevin Lanahan did for us on the kind of bad, document remediation work that he shared with us. The next one is the first session that Lainey did that this one builds on, creating an accessible PDF. And as you scroll through there are a couple of other ones that are in here that are not specifically ours, like how to add captions while uploading and editing. They're just videos that I found that I thought were worth sharing. But here is the number 10 one is creating a accessible Word document. That's the one that we did in May, I think, that you were referring to, Lainey. So feel free to scroll through there. It's definitely building on different topics. And, I'd be real interested if you folks would go ahead and put in the chat box any other topics you would be interested in learning about. This is your opportunity to tell us what sessions you'd be most interested in learning from, or what your agency or your department is needing to learn more about when it comes to accessible documents, or even like basic website accessibility. We can provide some training for you on that through this Zoom process that we have. So I'll wait a little bit and see if anybody adds anything in there.